As you know, cruises on liners are an excellent alternative to a regular vacation. Modern cruise liners are whole floating resorts which have clubs, restaurants, swimming pools, and much more, which will allow passengers to have a great time while the liner is moving to its destination. The number of passengers of such a liner can reach up to 2,000 people. And this is without taking into account the team, support, and maintenance personnel. However, such prolonged isolation in the ocean can be dangerous. This confirms the case of Amy Lynn Bradley and proves that if you are far from land, it does not mean that you are far from crimes and all the other horrors of earthly life. On March 21, 1998, 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley, along with her parents Ron and Eva, as well as her 21-year-old brother Brad, went on a week-long cruise. The choice of the family is full of Royal Caribbean International Royal Caribbean Cruise. On the liner with the fabulous name of Rhapsody of the Seas, the girl was very impressed with this trip, although she felt some discomfort because she had never been in the open sea for so long before. After visiting Aruba, the liner headed for the island of Curaçao. It was the third day of a week-long cruise. The family had fun, accumulated pleasant impressions, and had a pretty good time. On the 23rd of March, Amy and her parents went to a party, which, of course, took place here, in a club on board the ship, where they drank, had fun together with a local musical group called Blue Orchid. Blue Orchid parents went to bed earlier, and Amy and Brad danced until early in the morning. The bassist of the band, nicknamed Yellow, whose real name is Alastair Douglas, later stated that he last saw the girl at 1 o'clock in the morning. They wished each other good night and parted. There was even a video shot at that disco to create a cruise commercial. In this video, Amy also flashed several times. These shots will later be provided by the videographer who was shooting. It is known that Brad briefly left the party to buy cigarettes. At 3:30, Brad went to his cabin, and Amy stayed at the club. Amy and Brad shared a cabin during that cruise. After all, it was cheaper that way. Closer to 4 o'clock in the morning, Amy herself returned to the cabin. On the balcony of the cabin, the brother and sister discussed plans for the next day, after which Brad went to bed, and Amy stayed on the balcony. Between 5:15 and 5:30, Amy's father woke up and saw that his daughter was sleeping on a chair on the balcony of her cabin, because it was too stuffy inside the cabin. That was the last time her father saw her. At 6 in the morning, my father woke up again. But the daughter was no longer in that place. Documents, personal belongings. Everything was in place. Only her cigarettes and lighter were missing. Ron went into the cabin and made sure that Brad was sleeping in place. Thinking that his daughter decided to walk on the liner, Ron went in search of her. Apparently, the girl was going to go out for a while because she didn't even put on her shoes. Although it is known that on a 7-day cruise, Amy took with her as many as 10 pairs of shoes. The videos made for the commercial show Amy dancing with Yellow. Also, one of the witnesses later stated that he saw Yellow handing Amy some dark drink. Coffee, perhaps. Other witnesses saw that Alastair Douglas left the premises where the disco was held alone. They didn't see Amy. Later, Amy's father said, "I tried to find her. When I couldn't find her, I didn't know what to think, because Amy wasn't in the habit of going anywhere. and not to say where she's going. Later, two girls will report that they saw Alastair Yellow Douglas and Amy Lynn Bradley enter the club together at 5:30, which Amy had left earlier at 4 in the morning. Amy's family went to the liner's crew and asked to make an announcement using the ship's paging system, asking for help in finding Amy. Initially, this request was rejected for the reason that it was still early in the morning, and the crew did not want to wake up other passengers. As a result, the announcement still sounded, but it happened so late that by that time most of the passengers had already disembarked on the shore of the island of Curaçao, where the ship entered the docks. In general, the crew of the liner somehow reluctantly helped the family in search of their daughter. In addition to the voice announcement, they did not help the Bradley family in any way that day. Amy's family was told that no more announcements would be given on the ship, and was also refused to post photos of the missing on board the ship. The crew of the liner explained this by their unwillingness to worry the other passengers. So Amy's brother was the last person among the family members who talked to her. My parents and I had to go through a lot. But the last thing I said to Amy that night before going to bed, "I love you." Before I fell asleep that night. Knowing that was the last thing I said to her, it always comforted me, Brad said. Then, the narrative of this story begins to change, depending on the narrators. According to representatives of the travel agency, the liner was searched from top to bottom. But the girls' parents and other vacationers point to negligent searches, as when they first requested the announcement. The family left the ship, but soon took off instead of its next stop in St. Martin, and boarded again after the FBI reported that the search for Amy was carried out only in the bathrooms and common areas of the liner, but not in the cabins and staff quarters. In the end, the FBI boarded the liner, but their search did not lead to results, and the management of the Royal Caribbean Company began to claim that Amy, while intoxicated, fell overboard. Although no evidence has been provided to support this version. In any case, no trace of Amy was found, no hints of where she could have disappeared. The Coast Guard of the Netherlands Antilles, an autonomous region that includes the island of Curaçao, conducted a 4-day search on the island and its territorial waters. These searches ended on the 27th of March and brought no results. A few days later, Royal Caribbean chartered a boat to scour the coastlines of the island. These searches ended on the 29th of March, but still did not bring results. Since then, no trace of Amy Lynn Bradley has been officially found. Later, Alastair Yellow Douglas, the bassist of the band who played on the liner, and who danced with Amy the night before her disappearance, will be cleared of all suspicion of involvement in the disappearance of Amy. After he is interrogated, and he passes a lie detector test. But Brad, the brother of the disappeared girl, will remember a rather strange case related to Alastair, or rather their meeting. The fact is that in the morning, when Amy disappeared, Yellow approached Brad and expressed his condolences in connection with the disappearance of his sister. Then Brad wondered how he could have found out about the disappearance, because at that time it had not yet been announced. Soon after the disappearance, reports of Amy's appearance in Curaçao began to arrive. In August 1998, a group of tourists from Canada, 2 men and 1 woman, they reported seeing a girl who looked like Amy on the beach. There were 2 strange people on both sides of the girl. Apparently, they were guarding her. When one of the Canadians spoke loudly to his friends in English, that girl quickly looked around and walked in their direction. However, one of her two escorts made it clear that she should stop. After that, the girl, along with two men, dejectedly went into a cafe, but continued to look at the Canadians, trying to attract their attention. At that time, these tourists had no idea who Amy Bradley was until they saw her photo in the Unsolved Mysteries program. When these tourists realized what was going on, they immediately contacted the Bradley family. One of them, an engineer named David Carmichael, even flew to Virginia to meet her parents. These tourists were able to accurately describe the girl's tattoos. It turned out that these were the same tattoos as Amy's. One of these tattoos was an image on the shoulder of a Tasmanian devil, who turns a basketball. Another tattoo was of a gecko lizard. After this information, the FBI was immediately sent to Curaçao. But it didn't bring results. Around the same time, the Bradley family hired a private investigator. However, in the end, this detective cheated them out of more than $100,000. In the end, he admitted his guilt and returned the entire amount to the family. Shortly after the disappearance, a Curaçao taxi driver showed up and said that while at work, a girl similar in description to Amy approached him. She asked the driver for a cell phone. The driver didn't know who she was, so he refused her. When he found out about the missing Amy Lynn Bradley, he immediately contacted the police. However, I could not provide any additional information. A U.S. Navy soldier reported seeing Emily Bradley in 1999. This time she was allegedly spotted in a brothel in Curaçao. He said he went to this place to find a woman to spend time with. And in the end, I found Amy. When she found out that the young man was an American, she allegedly told him that her name was Amy Bradley, and she begged him for help, explaining that she was being held here against her will, not allowed to leave the building, and, in fact, she was a prisoner. However, this soldier did not want to get into trouble because of the story with the brothel, so he did not try to help the girl. And also didn't tell this story to anyone. He contacted the Bradley family through their website, and he told the story only after he resigned. The brothel itself burned down under rather mysterious circumstances, even before the officer contacted the family. In the fall of 1999, a man named Frank Jones contacted the Bradley family and claimed that Amy was being held by Colombian gangsters on the island of Curaçao. Jones claimed to be a former member of the American Special Forces and offered to help free Amy. He also claimed that he had a witness, a cook, who accurately described the girl's tattoos and even a lullaby that the missing woman sang. Allegedly the same one that her mother sang to her as a child. Two former Navy SEALs were also sent to Curaçao to pinpoint the location of Amy Lynn Bradley. When Jones demanded money to confirm the start of the operation to free Amy, Bradley's family demanded to provide evidence that Jones really has information about the whereabouts of their daughter. Then Jones sent a photo of a woman with a similar tattoo after that. The Bradley family paid Jones a total of $210,000. Jones told Bradley's family to fly to Florida and wait for a call from him after Amy is released. The family waited at the hotel for a week, after which they received a call from one of Jones' employers who reported that the whole operation was a fraud. The cook, the photos, the gang of Colombians, and the house where Amy is being held, it was all a cleverly thought-out scheme. Jones himself never served in the Special Forces and eventually pleaded guilty, received a 5-year sentence, and returned $210,000 to the family in the network. The next most famous statement was made in 2005, this time in Barbados. A woman named Jody Moore went to the toilet in a department store, in a separate stall. A girl came into the next booth, accompanied by 3 men. The men shouted at the girl, threatened her, and referred to some kind of deal that she probably made with them. Then the men came out. Moore came out of her stall and saw a girl hunched over the sink. Judy went up to this girl, who told her that her name was Emmy, she was from Virginia. Amy Lynn Bradley was originally from the city of Petersburg, which is located in the state of Virginia. A few minutes later, the men re-entered the restroom and took the girl out. Judy immediately called the authorities and helped the FBI make sketches of the 3 men and this girl. The girl in the sketches was very similar to the girl from the photos sent by the family. Even before Emmy disappeared, suspicious things were happening on the ship. 3 waiters very quickly became friends with Emmy, almost immediately after she boarded the ship. When the ship docked at Roubaix, one of these waiters, when talking to the girl's father, even called her by name and asked where she was. When the waiter was looking for the girl, he told her father that they, presumably members of the service staff, wanted to invite the girl to a bar called Carlos and Charlie's. This is the same bar, after visiting, which Natalie Holloway disappeared without a trace in 2005. Emmy herself later told her father that these waiters gave her goosebumps and that she did not want to have anything to do with them. That night, when the ship's crew posted a photo with the dinner participants, Amy's mom noticed that all the photos with her daughter were missing. Despite the fact that the head of the media department clearly remembered that he had personally published them earlier, the FBI conducted a thorough investigation to find Amy Bradley. Friends in Virginia, work colleagues and neighbors were questioned. Everyone came to the conclusion that she had no reason to run away from her family. All family members have successfully passed a lie detector test. Even coaches from her college have been questioned. In addition, Amy sent a lot of postcards in the first days of her trip. She had just got a dog, had recently graduated from college, and was planning to get a new job. In other words, this behavior is not like the behavior of a suicide or a person who is going to disappear. At the end of the 2010 year, probably as a result of the actions of Hurricane Thomas, the bones of a human jaw appeared on the beach of Aruba. This discovery was immediately linked to the disappearance of Natalie Holloway. As soon as the local authorities determined that the bone did not belong to Natalie, further checks were immediately curtailed. This happened despite the fact that Amy Lynn Bradley and 9 other vacationers disappeared for 15 years before Holloway disappeared. It was only determined that the bone belonged to a younger girl of European origin. There are only 3 versions regarding what could have happened to Amy Lynn Bradley. The first one: she was drunk, and when she was on the ship, she accidentally fell overboard. Accordingly, she simply drowned. Or she deliberately jumped overboard to commit suicide. However, both of these outcomes are unlikely, since along with the fact that her body was not found during a thorough search. First of all, Amy was a pretty advanced swimmer. Secondly, it didn't look like she was going to commit suicide. And thirdly, she was not so drunk that she simply fell overboard. The second and most popular version says that she was abducted and forcibly held on board for the first time, possibly in the cabin of a certain passenger. She may have been drugged to keep her quiet, while the kidnapper carried her off the ship. This version is the most obvious. Many assume that she was abducted in the way described above, or in another way, and later sold into sexual slavery. All the evidence points to this version. But given that most of this evidence cannot be verified, there is still no clear answer to the question of what happened to Amy Lynn Bradley that night on the cruise ship. In the 2005 year, Amy's parents starred in one of the episodes of the Dr. Phil program, which also discussed the case of the disappearance of Natalie Holloway. There was shown one of the photos that was sent to the girl's parents by email. The photos were discovered by a member of the organization who is trying to track potential victims on websites advertising the services of prostitutes. This photo shows a young girl on a bed in an obscene pose. In addition, this girl looks confused and depressed. On the website, her name was listed as Jazz. The girl in the photo resembles the name so much that for many it is proof that she was abducted and sold into sexual slavery. Unfortunately, there are no ways to confirm or deny that it is Amy who is depicted in the photo. The parents passed these photos to the FBI, and they were sure that it was Amy. However, all attempts to track down a similar girl on other similar sites did not bring results. And this photo is the last one from this case. No more new evidence has surfaced. The case of Amy Lynn Bradley has been covered in several programs on television and podcasts. These two cases began to be linked together, justifying it as the work of a criminal organization that is engaged in human trafficking. However, given that none of the girls have ever been found, there is no way to confirm these suspicions. The Bradley family has offered a reward of $250,000 for information that will help bring their daughter home, and also $50,000 for verified information about her location. In addition, the FBI is offering a reward of $25,000. At the time of her disappearance, Amy Lynn Bradley had short brown hair. Her eyes are green. Height about 170 centimeters, weight 54 kilograms. As already mentioned, there were tattoos on her body. A Tasmanian devil on his shoulder who spins a basketball, a gecko lizard on his navel, the sun on his lower back, a Chinese character on his right ankle. Of course, there were suggestions that since Amy was on a cruise at the time of her disappearance and upon arrival home, it was necessary to start an adult life, go to work and immerse yourself in routine. She could decide to stay in the area forever. The same assumptions were made about the mysterious disappearance of a graduate of the medical university, Brian Schaefer. However, after the passage of time and a large number of large-scale searches, these versions, unfortunately, were not confirmed in either case. The way of thinking and actions of the missing people did not correspond to such behavior. Perhaps now Amy Lynn Bradley is in sexual slavery and is forced to do her vile work every day. She has no way to escape, and her captors are unlikely to let her go voluntarily. Every day she dreams of seeing her parents and brother again, and to return to that atmosphere of serenity, care and love that surrounded her before the terrible and mysterious events that occurred on a cruise liner located in the middle of the Caribbean Sea on the 24th of March, 1998 year.